Captain Underpants and the Terrifying Return of Tippy Tinkletrousers, the 9th novel by Dav Pilkey. This is the part 2 video, and in this one I'll read chapter 13 to chapter 25, alright? You stopped at chapter 13. Let's go to page 114, and let's continue reading. Let's go into it. Chapter 13, The Detention. I don't want you guys messing with me ever again, George said firmly as the bully squealed in high-pitched terror. And that yellow-haired kid is off limits, too. You mess with us, you answer to the tie. George snapped to his tie in the air one last time, causing the 4 sobbing 6th graders to shriek like baboons. Uncle Benny, Kipper wailed through his tears. Suddenly, Mr. Crab came storming out of the building. What's going on out here? He screamed. That little kid beat us up. Kipper sobbed. Oh, he did he? Yelled Mr. Crab as he grabbed George by his arm. I don't take kindly of bullies in this school. They're the bullies, cried Harold, pointing at Kipper and his 3 frightened friends. Those guys were just about to beat that kid up. He was just defending himself. Mr. Crab reached over and grabbed Harold by his arm. I don't like liars either, he growled. Mr. Crab yanked both boys to the detention room. You 2 troublemakers are going to stay here until you've learned your lesson, he shouted and slammed the door. So much for a good first impression, said George. The 2 boys sat in silence for several minutes. Harold opened his backpack and took out a notebook and the pointy half of one of his broken pencils. He started to draw. What grade are you in? Asked George. Kindergarten, said Harold. Me too, said George. I'm new. We just moved here 3 days ago. Oh, said Harold. I think you live next door to my house. Really, said George. George glanced over and noticed that Harold was drawing a giant monster. Hey, you're a good drawer, George said. Thanks, said Harold. George watched as Harold drew a flying hero zapping the monster with a laser beam. Cool, said George, pointing to the superhero. What's that guy's name? Harold shrugged. He doesn't have a name. How come? Asked George. Harold shrugged again. It's just a picture, he said. It's not really a story. Oh, said George. George watched intently as Harold finished his picture. When he was done, Harold folded the page back and started drawing a new picture on the next page. Do you want to draw too? Harold asked. I have some more pencils. They're broken, but the pointy parts still work okay. No, said George, I can't draw good. I'm a writer. Oh, said Harold. He tore some fresh pages out from the back of his notebook and handed them to George. Here, you can write on these if you want. George took the papers and thought for a long time. Then he wrote The Adventures of Dogman at the top of the first page. At the bottom, he wrote by George and... Hey, what's your name, kid? George asked. Harold, said Harold. George wrote Harold's name down at the bottom. I'm gonna write a comic book, said George. You can draw the pictures, okay? Okay, said Harold. And that is how George and Harold became friends and started their publishing empire on the very same day. Chapter 14, The Adventures of Dogman by George and Harold. The Adventures of Dogman by George and Harold. One time there was a police guy. His partner was a dog named Greg. They were good at catching criminals and stuff. But one day there was a bomb. We have to stop the bomb, Greg. But they were too late. Kablooey! Bomb blew up and they got hurted. An ambulance took them to the hospital. How do you feel, old friend? Rough. Me too. Soon the doctor came in with sad news. Boo-hoo. I am sorry, Greg, but your body is dying. Your head is dying too, cop. Raz, I sure hate my dying head. But then, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we sew Greg's head on the cop's body? Good idea, nurse lady. You're a genius. Hooray! So then they had a big operation. The doctor cut off Greg's head and sewed it on cop's body. What a lucky day. And so, hooray for Dogman! Dogman was the best of all cops. He could sniff crooks with his dog nose, wrath, sniff, sniff. He could hear cries with his dog ears, wrath. And best of all, he could punch criminals with his human fist. Ow! Wrath. Quick, Dogman, where is the crook? Roof, roof. He's up on the roof. What is he wearing? Pam, 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 pam. He's wearing pants. How will we ever get up there? Bark, bark. Good idea, Dogman. Let's climb the bark of this tree. And we caught the bad guy. We couldn't have did it without you. Dogman was the greatest cop of ever. But he had one mortal fear, vacuum cleaner. Dogman saw the vacuum cleaner. He ran and hid it. Oh, I forgot. Dogs are scared of vacuum cleaners. But nobody knew that somebody was watching. Somebody evil. It was Petey the world's most evilest cat. Ha ha ha. Now I know Dogman's weaknesses. So Petey invented an evil vacuum robot. Go, my precious. Go and stick up all the money from the bank. Okay. Ha ha ha. Hey, no fair. Quick, Dogman. A robot is robbing the bank. Dogman ran to save the day. But then Dogman ran away. I'll get you, Dogman. He ran and ran. Finally, Dogman got cornered in a corner. I'll kill you. The vacuum cleaner got closer and closer. Dogman got scareder and scareder. The vacuum cleaner attacked his feet, but then look at what happened. Pop, the vacuum got unplugged. Dogman wasn't scared no more. He beat up the robot. Then he followed the cord. It led straight to Petey's hideout. Uh-oh. Then Petey got arrested. Wrath. If only I would have made that cord 6 inches longer. Dogman was the hero. Good boy, Dogman. Shake. Wine, wine, wine. Good idea. Let's have some wine. Hooray for Dogman. The end. Chapter 15. The plan. Mr. Krust's day had been very busy, and he'd completely forgotten all about the 2 boys he had banished to the detention room. By the time the final bell rang at 2:45, George and Harold had finished their very first comic book. Hey, this comic book turned out pretty good, said George. Yep, said Harold, smiling. I bet we can make copies of this and sell them for 25 cents each, said George. The 2 boys gathered their things and walked out the front door of the school. We should start our own comic book company, said Harold. Let's do it, said George. We can call it Treehouse Comic Inc. Why Treehouse? Asked Harold. Because my dad is building me a treehouse in our backyard, said George. It's going to have electricity and a TV and everything. We can make our comic books up there. Awesome, said Harold. George and Harold walked by the trash bin where Kipper and his friends were just about to administer killer wedgies to a couple of kindergarteners. Oh, Kippy, called George. The bullies turned and saw George reaching for his tie. Suddenly their eyes filled with horror. They released their prey and ran away, waving their arms and yipping like whiner dogs. I think I'm going to wear a tie every day from now on, said George. I think that's a good idea, said Harold. As George and Harold walked home, the 2 friends talked about their favorite movies and games, which videos were the funniest, and what kind of bubblegum blew the best bubbles. Said Harold. All that talk about bubblegum is making me hungry. Come on over my house, said George. I make a mean peanut butter and gummy worm sandwich. Really? Said Harold. Yep, George said. The secret is the chocolate syrup. Okay, said Harold. Soon the boys reached George's house and headed for the backyard. George's dad was hard at work building George's new tree house. Hi, Pops, said George. Hey, buddy, said George's dad. How's your first day after new school? Okay, said George. And who's your new friend? George's dad asked. This is Harold, said George. He's a good drawer. Hello, Harold, said George's dad. Hi, said Harold. Well, we've got a lot of work to do, Pops, said George. You want us to bring you a peanut butter and gummy worm sandwich? No, thank you, said George's dad. The two new friends walked into George's house, made the sandwiches, and got right to work. George and Harold knew it was up to them to put a stop to Kipper Crab's region of terror, so they made a long list of Kipper's strengths and weaknesses to get a better understanding of their mortal enemy. After a few minutes, Harold began to feel discouraged. "This is terrible," said Harold. "Kipper Crab has so many strengths. I can only think of one weakness." "What's that?" asked George. "Well, he's kinda dumb," said Harold. George smiled and wrote down "kinda dumb" under weakness. "That's all we need," said George. Chapter 16, Super Spies. The next day at school, Harold stood close to George. The two boys spent their every free moment spying on Kipper and gathering as much information as they could about their enemy. They wrote down Kipper's locker number and the type of padlock he used. They took note of Kipper's schedule and paid special attention to what he normally did between classes. They took measurements and even stayed after school to spy on Kipper's wrestling practices. By the end of the week, George and Harold knew Kipper's schedule better than Kipper knew it. Kipper Crab was a creature of habit. Every day he did the exact same things at the exact same times. At the end of every school day, Kipper would go to his locker and unlock his heavy-duty padlock with the key he kept on a thick metal chain around his neck. Kipper would place his padlock on top of his locker, then open the locker door. Next, Kipper would empty his pockets, putting his valuables inside the locker. His cell phone always went on the top shelf, and the money stolen from the kindergarteners would always get crammed into a duffel bag at the bottom of the locker. Finally, Kipper would grab his padlock from the top of the locker, put it back on the door, and click it shut to lock it. After wrestling practice, Kipper would go back to his locker and unlock it the very same way. He'd retrieve his cell phone, grab his heavy-duty padlock from the top of his locker, and put it back on the door. Finally, he'd click the shit to lock everything to back up again. Surprisingly, Kipper usually left all of his stolen money in his locker every night. Perhaps Kipper thought the money was safest in his locker. Nobody could open the locker without a key. Nobody but Kipper had the key, and Kipper never took the key off of his neck, not even in the shower. "We'll never get that key away from Kipper," said Harold, as the two boys walked up the aisles of the local hardware store. "We don't need the key," said George. "We just needed this." George picked up a brand new padlock from the home security section. "This is the exact same kind of padlock that Kipper uses on his lockers," said George. "But it won't have the same key," said Harold. "Each one has a different key." "I know," said George. "So how is that padlock going to help us?" asked Harold. "You'll see," said George, smiling. After the boys paid for the brand new heavy-duty padlock, they went to the toy shop across the street. Down at the end of aisle 3, near the beads and jewelry, George found what he was looking for, a Susie Sunshine Friendship Bracelet Kit. "What is that for?" asked Harold. "We've got to make a couple of friendship bracelets this weekend," said George. "Why? What for?" said Harold. "You'll see," said George, smiling even more. That weekend, George and Harold spent a lot of time drawing up plans and designing plans that would help put an end to the police situation at Ramirez Elementary School. Then the two boys went through their homes, collecting everything they needed for the job. George found a long row of shelf-lining paper in his kitchen and measured it carefully. "Hey, Mom, can we have this?" said George. "It's for school." "I suppose so," said George's mom. Harold found some old pants and dress shoes that his dad had left behind when he moved away. He was pretty sure his dad wouldn't mind if they nailed them to George's wooden stilts. "I still don't understand how we're going to hide these stilts in the school," said George as he practiced walking on them. "You'll see," said Harold, who knew a few tricks of his own. Chapter 17, Monday. On Monday morning, the boys woke up early, gathered their supplies, and headed to school about 15 minutes before the rest of the students started to arrive. George and Haru carried their stills and supplies into the boys' restroom upstairs and placed them inside one of the empty stalls. Finally, they closed the stall door and locked it. If you were standing outside the stall, looking underneath the door, it appeared as if somebody was sitting down and they're taking care of businesses. George and Haru knew that nobody would dare go near the stall, so it was now the safest place in the school to hide stuff. Soon the students began arriving and the day started pretty much like normal. The crowd marched up and down the hallways, screaming and making children cry. Kipper and his tree stole money and disturbed Wedgies to the kindergarteners, and a general feeling of hopelessness and despair filled the morning air. At lunchtime, as usual, the downtrodden kindergarteners sat at their table with no food at all. Mr. Krabs stomped up to the kindergarten table and started getting angry. "How come you kids never have any food at lunchtime?" he shouted. Said one kid. "You're on diet." "Oh," said Mr. Krab as he pulled his belt up over his giant stomach. "Well, good," he said. "It's important to stay fit and healthy like me." In the afternoon, George and Haru asked to be excused so they could use the restroom. They only had about 5 minutes to set things up, so they had to hurry. Haru opened the locked door of their secret restroom stall, and George climbed up on the stills. Quickly, they sneaked out into the hallway. George still walked over to Skipper's locker, and Harold handed him the long spool of shelf-lining paper. Carefully, George placed the paper on top of the lockers and rolled it down to the end. The paper flipped over the edge of the locker tops and rolled down the side. Harold caught it and taped it to the side of the lockers, marking off the measurements with a ruler. George put the padlock that he and Harold had bought on the end of the paper 2 lockers down from Kipper's. They were ready. Quickly, they put their supplies back into the restroom stall, locked the door, and hurried back to their classroom. At the end of the day, Kipper walked to his locker as usual. He unlocked his lock with the key hanging around his neck, then put his padlock on top of his locker, right on top of the long roll paper. George and Haru were standing about 6 lockers away, where Harold had taped the end of the paper to the side of the long row of lockers. Now came the tricky part. As Harold provided cover, George carefully pulled out the long row of paper. The paper began to move. Kipper's padlock, which was just above Kipper's head, began to move away from Kipper. George and Harold's padlock, which was 2 lockers away, began moving toward Kipper. Harold had measured everything carefully, so George knew to pull the paper exactly 24 inches. When he was finished pulling, the new padlock was directly above Kipper's locket. Kipper had just finished stuffing all of his stolen money into his duffel bag. He put his cell phone on the top shelf of his locker, closed the door, and reached up and grabbed George and Harold's padlock. Next, he closed the door and clicked the new padlock on securely. "Let's boogie," said Kipper to his buddies, and they strutted to the gymnasium to get ready for wrestling practice. "That was awesome," said Harold. "Yeah," said George, "but we've still got a lot of work to do." George and Harold waited patiently until almost everybody had gone home. Some kids were still in the gym, or outside, or in the chess club downstairs, but the hallways and restrooms were empty. George and Harold sneaked over to Kipper's locker, unlocked their padlock, and opened the door. Harold unzipped Kipper's duffel bag and emptied all of the stolen money onto the floor. "Whoa," said Harold. "There must be $1,000 here." Harold quickly scooped up the stolen cash while George typed on Kipper's cell phone. "What are you doing with that phone?" asked Harold. "I'm sending a text to Kipper's 3 goons," said George. Once the money was safe and the text was sent, George and Harold put everything back the way it was, with 2 additions. Haru put the Suzy Sunshine Friendship Bracelet kit in Kipper's locker, and George placed an envelope beside Kipper's phone. Finally, George grabbed Kipper's padlock from the top of the lockers, closed the door, and locked it with Kipper's own padlock. And they set everything up so it would be ready for tomorrow afternoon. "Let's get out of here," Haru said nervously. "Just one more thing," said George. Quickly, the boys sneaked into the gym locker room and left the second envelope inside one of Kipper's smelly shoes. Then they hurried out of the Kipper and headed for home. "I kinda wish we could stay and watch the fireworks," said Haru. "I think it's better if you're not there," said George. "Things are about to get ugly." Chapter 18. Things Get Ugly. Kipper found the envelope on his shoe just after wrestling practice ended. He opened it. Inside were 2 friendship bracelets and a note addressed to him. Kipper proudly slipped each friendship bracelet onto his wrist and admired it. He couldn't wait to show his buddies. Alright, what's the letter? "Dear Kipper, we made these friendship bracelets for you because we think you are totally cool and stuff. Love, the cheerleaders." Who were all out in the hallway staring at their cell phones in shock. "Look what I got," Kipper said proudly, waving his wrist at his goons. Kipper's friends, who were all reading the same text message on their phones, looked up at Kipper with their mouths hanging open in disbelief. "What?" said Kipper. "They're just friendship bracelets." And what's the message? What's the text message? "Let's make friendship bracelets. Get up supplies from a locker. Whoever makes the prettiest one gets a big kiss from me." Kipper's 3 friends looked at each other like Kipper had gone completely mad. "I don't want to make friendship bracelets with you, dude," said Lukey. "Me neither," said the other 2 thugs simultaneously. "What are you talking about?" said Kipper. He unlocked his locker and opened it up. "Hey, what the heck is this?" Kipper screamed. "Somebody's been in my locker." Loogie, Bug, and Fingsting saw the Suzy Sunshine Friendship Bracelet kit and shook their heads in disgust. Kipper kicked the kit into the hallway and stomped on it. Then he tore open the duffel bag. It was empty. "Ugh!" Kipper screamed. "Somebody stole all my money." Kipper looked up and down the hall frantically. "When I find out who's gonna be in my locker, I'm gonna kiss them?" asked Fingsting. The 2 other thugs laughed. Kipper grabbed Fingsting by his shirt collar and shook him back and forth like a rag doll. "What are you talking about?" he screamed. "This," said Fingsting. He showed Kipper the text that had been sent from Kipper's cell phone. I didn't write that," Kipper screamed. "Whoa, what's up with those friendship bracelets on your wrists then?" asked Bluck. The cheerleaders gave me those," said Kipper. At that very moment, a group of cheerleaders was coming in from practice outside. "I'll prove it," said Kipper. He showed the bracelets to the cheerleaders, waving his wrist at them like a lunatic. "You guys made these for me, right?" Kipper asked them, pointing desperately at the friendship bracelets. The cheerleaders gave Kipper a strange look. "Ew," said Wendy Swan, the head cheerleader. Kipper blinked his eyes like a crazy person. He began breathing heavily. He clenched his fist and shook with rage. Kipper's friends laughed at each other, exchanging silent, worried looks. They each took a few steps backward, as if they feared Kipper might explode. "Hey, we'll see you later, Suzy Sunshine," said Loogie. The 3 ducks walked away laughing, leaving Kipper alone in friend's eye. Finally, Kipper returned to his locker. He grabbed his cell phone and found an envelope beside it. Kipper tore the envelope open with insane rage and read the note inside. "I'm coming for you," signed Wedgie Magee. Now, Chapter 19. Who is Wedgie Magee? George and Haru stopped by the thrift store on their way home to buy a bunch of supplies for Tuesday. The checkout lady gave them a very strange look as they walked up to the cash register. "What are all these dresses for?" asked the lady. "They're for school," said Haru. "Oh," said the lady. When they got home, the 2 boys sat in George's bedroom and counted Kipper's stolen money. It totaled $919. "I feel like robbing us," said George. What should we do with all this dough? I think we should use it to buy lunches for all the kindergarteners, said Harold. That's what it was supposed to be used for in the first place. George agreed. He picked up the phone and called Pizza Palace. Can you guys deliver pizza to the elementary school around noon tomorrow? He said. Really? Awesome! You take 5 large cheese pizza, 5 large pepperoni, and 5 large black olive and pineapple. George discussed the details and arranged to drop off the payment in the morning. We're all set for lunch tomorrow, said George. Cool, said Harold. The next morning on the way to school, George and Harold walked by the Pizza Palace. It wouldn't open until 11 a.m., but that didn't matter. George took out an envelope filled with some money, coupons, instructions, and a tip for the delivery guy and dropped it through the mail slot on the front door. George and Harold had a very busy day ahead of them. They got to school early and unlocked the door to their secret wrestling stall. As the two boys unloaded their supply stall, and arranged their stills, they heard the sounds of the other students beginning to arrive. They sounded just like any other day, but things at Drommore's elementary school were starting to change. Kipper stood by the entrance of the school like normal, but he wasn't just stealing money from the kindergarteners like he usually did. They also wanted information. He seemed a little anxious and shaky, like he hadn't gotten a lot of sleep the night before. Kipper's 3 buddies, who usually stuck close to his side, were keeping their distance from him. Loogie, Buck, and Frankenstein all watched Kipper with worried looks on their faces. Kipper grabbed every kid who came toward the door and asked them all the same question. Who is Wedgie Magee? Nobody outside the school had ever heard of Wedgie Magee, but inside the school, George and Harold were busy spreading rumors about a mysterious stranger. Did you hear about Wedgie Magee? George asked Harold loudly near a group of gossipy girls. Yeah, said Harold, even louder. I heard Wedgie Magee is a ghost. Me too, said George. I remember Wedgie Magee hunts the hallways of the school looking for revenge. Revenge against who? Asked Harold intensely. Against Kipper Crumb, cried George in a booming whisper. The gossipy girls listened closely as George continued. I heard that Kipper Crumb got cursed by the ghost of Wedgie Magee. Heavens no, cried Harold. What for? For being mean to kindergarteners, said George. Wedgie Magee is the patron ghost for kindergarteners. I did not know that, said Harold. Oh, poor Kipper, poor Kipper. George and Harold walked away, shaking their heads with pity. The wide-eyed group of gossipy girls had been rendered uncharacteristically speechless. Quickly, they began sending frantic texts to all of their friends about the horrible ghost of Wedgie Magee. Within an hour, the whole school knew the terrible truth about Wedgie Magee, and it didn't take long before the information made its way to Kipper and his friends. That's stupid, said Kipper. There's no such thing as ghosts. Yeah, said Loogie. But everybody can go through walls and even lockers. Maybe the ghost stole all of the money yesterday. That's a bunch of bunk, said Kipper. What's the ghost gonna do with the money? Maybe he'll give it back to the kindergarteners, said Finstein. I heard Wedgie Magee was a friend to all kindergarteners. Excuse me, said a pizza delivery guy holding 15 large pizza boxes. I'm supposed to deliver these pizzas to the kindergarteners. Do you guys know where the cafeteria is? Down the hall, said Kipper. Hey, who ordered those pizzas? I don't know, said the delivery guy. I never saw him. I think his name was Wedgie something. Kipper gasped. You say you never saw him? Nope, said the delivery guy. Nobody had ever seen him, but he's a pretty good tipper. Chapter 20, Tuesday afternoon. Lunchtime was a great success. All the kindergarteners loved their pizza and pop, and nobody seemed to mind that it had all been bought and paid for by a ghost. The pizza tastes the best, Freddie Moore, and the other kindergarteners couldn't have agreed more. After school, Kipper unlocked his locker and once again put his padlock on top of the locker. And just like yesterday, George put it on the long strip of paper, switching Kipper's padlock for their own. Kipper scrapped George and Harold's padlock, clicked it closed on his locker, and pulled hard to make sure it was really locked tightly. It was. Once the hallways were empty, George and Harold got back to work. George unlocked Kipper's locker while Harold filled it up with pretty, lacy dresses, making sure the bows looked beautiful and the ruffles were just right. George typed another text message on Kipper's phone and left a new envelope beside it. He unlocked the door with Kipper's lock and set everything up so it will work again the same way tomorrow. "Are you sure we can't stay here and watch all the fun?" asked Harold. "We better not," said George. "Things are about to get even uglier." Chapter 21. Things get even uglier. When wrestling practice ended at 4:30, Kipper's friends rushed to their lockers and turned on their cell phones. As they had expected, there was another text from Kipper. "Let's play princess. I got pretty dresses for you to try on after practices. XOXO." What was it? Kiss love. I forgot. By the time Kipper got to his locker, he knew something was wrong. "What?" he yelled at his friend. "What now?" "Sorry, dude," said Loogie, "but we don't want to play dress up with you." "Yeah, princess," said Finstein. The three thugs chuckled. Kipper grabbed Buck's cell phone and read the message. I didn't write this," Kipper yelled. "And I don't have any dresses in my locker either. I can prove it." Kipper unlocked his locker and opened the door, revealing 3 of the prettiest dresses anyone had ever seen. Kipper's friend started laughing as he closed the door and checked to make sure he had opened the right locker. "Somebody is messing with me," screamed Kipper. He tore the dresses out of his locker and whipped them to the floor. "Maybe you're just getting in touch with your feminine side," said Loogie. Kipper's 3 friends burst into hysterical laughter. "Laugh it up, chumps," yelled Kipper as he searched the top shelf of his locker. Sure enough, there was another envelope. He ripped it open and read the message out loud. "There is no escape. Signed, Wedgie Magee." Kipper's friends stopped laughing and looked at the note. "Dude," said Buck, "I think you really did get cursed." "At least it's a funny curse," said Loogie. Chapter 22. Wednesday. Another day, another awesome lunch for George and Harold and their classmates. The pizza place had even delivered salads and breadsticks, and the kindergarteners had never been happier. At the end of the day, when wrestling practice was over, Kipper's 3 friends dashed back to their lockers as fast as they could to see what bizarre thing Kipper was going to do next. They were not disappointed. Right, let's read the text message. "You are invited to my pretty dolly tea party. If you need to borrow a dolly, meet me at my locker. I got extras. Kiss the nuts, kiss the nuts." Kipper was already angry when he reached his locker. He knew something was not right. "What?" he yelled at his friends. "What are you guys laughing about?" "Dude," said Loogie, "can I bring a teddy bear to your tea party, or is it just for dollies only?" The 3 ducks busted up laughing. Kipper grabbed Loogie's cell phone and read the message. "I did not write this," Kipper screamed wildly, "and I don't have any dolls in my locker either." Kipper grabbed the key from the chain around his neck, unlocked his padlock, and threw the locker door open with a mighty crash. About 20 dolls tumbled out of the locker and fell into a pile at Kipper's feet. Kipper's friends each took a few steps back. They weren't sure whether to keep laughing or start running. Kipper did nothing at first. He just stood there looking down at the mountain of dolls at his feet. Then he began breathing heavily as he started to twitch. The trembling originated at Kipper's feet, making its way slowly up his legs. By the time it reached Kipper's upper body, it was shaking like a volcano that was about to explode. Kipper squeezed his fist into tight knots of fury as he raised his right foot and began kicking the dolls. "I hate you, I hate you, I hate you!" Kipper screamed as he punted his pretty dollies up and down the hallway. Kipper's friend that never seen a freak out quite like this. Kipper grabbed two of the bigger dolls and started swinging them around and around, smashing them against his locker and just about anything else that was nearby. Then came to the tearing and the biting and the stomping and the decapitating. Loogie, Bug, and Finkstain decided it might be a good time to start running. Kipper's berserk-a-thon lasted about 15 minutes. Finally, he collapsed, exhausted, in a pile of fluffy polyester, filling traded dolly dresses and tiny plastic arms, legs, and heads. Kipper just sat there, breathing slowly for a long time and staring at nothing. Then Kipper thought of something. It was as if he had finally figured out the mysteries of the ages. He stood up and grabbed his padlock from the top of his locker. Carefully, he turned it over and over again in his hands, studying it very closely. Aha! He exclaimed. Chapter 23, Thursday. Things were back to normal on Thursday. Kipper stood in front of the school and made every kindergartner hand over their lunch money. Things are gonna change around here, Kipper told the children. Starting tomorrow, your taxes are going up. You kids are going to have to pay me $4 a day or it's wedgie time. Kipper's three ducks watched the shakedowns from a distance. Finally, they approached Kipper nervously. Dude, said Loogie, what are you doing, man? I'm taking back what's rightfully mine, said Kipper. Aren't you afraid of the ghost of Wedgie, Magee? Asked Bug. There's no ghost of Wedgie, Magee, you moron, yelled Kipper. It's all a setup. I figured it out last night. Somebody has been picking my padlock and putting stuff in my locker. But who would do that? Asked Loogie. The same person who has been writing those stupid text messages on my cell phone, said Kipper. But it's all going to end today. How? Asked Loogie. I got a new padlock, said Kipper. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a brand new Super Duper Combo Lock 2000. This thing is totally pig-proof, said Kipper. The four ducks walked into the school and headed for the lockers. Kipper unlocked his old padlock and threw it into the garbage can, along with the key around his sweaty neck. The Kipper put his all-new pig-proof combination padlock on his locker and clicked it shut. Let's see somebody try to mess with me now, Kipper sneered. But at noon, when the pizza delivery guy showed up with lunch for the kindergartners, Kipper stopped them in the hallway. You'll take those pizzas, said Kipper. But I'm supposed to deliver them to the kindergartners, said the delivery guy. We'll do it for you, said Kipper. Sorry, said the delivery guy, but I've got strict instructions from Wedgie Magee to... Oh, Uncle Benny, Kipper yelled. The crab came bounding up at the hallway. Boom, 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 boom. What seems to be the problem, Kipper? He asked. This guy's delivering pizza to the kindergartners, said Kipper. Is he allowed to do that? Absolutely not, said Principal Crab. Those kids are on diets. See, said Kipper to the delivery guy. Now give me those. Kipper Ducks took the pizzas and the pop right from the delivery guy. They brought it right to the kindergartners' table in the cafeteria and started stuffing their faces. Said Kipper to the hungry kindergartners. This pizza sure is tasty. The four barbarians devoured 8 whole pizzas between them and finished off 14 cans of pop. Then they sold all of their leftovers to some of the other students. Too bad the kindergartners can't have any, Kipper laughed. But they don't have any money, do they? George and Harlow were heartbroken. They'd already seen Kipper's new padlock and noticed that it never left Kipper's hand when he unlocked it. Not even for a second. Well, said Harlow sadly, I guess the jig is up. Nothing's over till we say it's over, said George. We've got to think of something else. Quick! Chapter 24, Foamy White Ectoplasm. After school, George and Harlow waited until the hallways were empty. Then they opened their secret stall in the boys' restroom. George had an idea. He climbed up on the stilts and Harlow pulled the pants all the way up to the top of George's head. Then as George tried walking around, looking out the zipper pull with one eye. Well, said George. How'd I look? I'm not sure, said Harlow. Kinda look like an artful with legs. Said George as he peeked at himself in the bathroom mirror. I think I'm going to need a haircut. George's idea would have to wait until tomorrow. Fortunately, the two boys had a backup plan. George and Harold ran to the convenience store up the street and bought 4 cans of shaving cream and a box of bendy straws. Then they hurried back to the school. "We're gonna have to work fast," said Harold. The two boys opened their box of bendy straws and pushed the straw over the spray nozzle of each can of shaving cream. Then George stuck a straw up Kipper's locker vent and began spraying. Harold took another can, stuck the straw up the vent of Lucy's locker, and started squirting. After a few minutes, George and Harold's cans were empty. They then took 2 more cans and did the same thing to Buzz and Fink's lockers. George and Harold had the empty shaving cream cans in the secret restroom stall. Then they ran out the back door after school toward the football field, screaming their heads off. The cheerleaders were just finishing their practice, so George and Harold running around like lunatics. "What's wrong, little boy?" asked one of the cheerleaders. We just saw a ghost," cried George. Yeah, cried Harold. "He was in the halfway over by the lockers." The cheerleaders were frightened. "What did he look like?" they asked. "He was invisible," cried George, "but he left a trail of foamy, white ectoplasm wherever he went." The cheerleaders screamed. They were terrified, but they were also very curious. The girls huddled together in tight, shivering group as they tiptoed into the school to see for themselves. Everything looked normal. They still screamed a lot anyway. One of them pushed the button on the drinking fountain, and when water squirted out, they all screamed some more. "What's going on?" yelled Kipper, who had just gone now to wrestling practice with his buddies. The cheerleader screamed again. "There's a ghost up here," cried Wendy Swan. "Some little kid saw it. It was leaving foamy white ectoplasm everywhere." "That's crazy," Kipper yelled. "Ghosts aren't for real." He and his buddies laughed arrogantly as they unlocked their lockers and opened the doors. Suddenly, 4 giant waves of foamy white shaving cream splashed out into the hallway. "Foamy white ectoplasm," yelled the cheerleaders. They screamed around for their lives. "Ectoplasm," cried Bug. "I've heard of that. That's ghost juice." "I got ghost juice on my pants," Lucy wailed as he burst into tears. "Get it off, get it off, get it off," screamed Frankenstein as he jumped around, spastically swatting at the shaving cream that covered his legs. "I hate ghost juice." "There's no such thing as ghosts," Skipper yelled, but it was no use. Loogie, Bug, and Flintstein slammed their lockers and screamed in horror as they slipped and slid into foamy white ectoplasm. 3 terrified ducks tumbled down the stairs, tripping and pushing and elbowing each other as they struggled to glide out the front door. Kipper was at his wit's end. He plopped down on the floor in the middle of the hallway and curled up into a shivering ball. "Uncle Benny," he wailed. As usual, Mr. Crab came running down the hallway. Boom, 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 boom. What's wrong, yelled Mr. Crab. Kipper showed Mr. Crab the ectoplasm and told him the whole terrifying story. "That's a bunch of bunk," yelled Mr. Crab. "This is an ectoplasm. It's shaving cream. I used this same brand myself." "Shaving cream," said Kipper. But how did it get inside our lockers?" "Well, somebody probably sprayed it through those vents on the door," Mr. Crab said. "It's the oldest trick in the book." Kipper studied the vents on the locker door as his passive, fearful expression slowly turned into a venomous visage of violence. Now Kipper was really mad. Chapter 25. Thursday afternoon. That afternoon at Harold's house, George and Harold wrote and illustrated a brand new comic book. When they were done, they scanned each page and printed out 4 copies on Harold's printer. The copybook had to look very old, so they took a large bowl outside and filled it with water. Harold added 2 handfuls of dirt and stirred 8 tablespoons of instant coffee crystals into the water. George carefully tore the edges of each page and crumpled them all up into little balls and soaked them in the giant bowl of filthy water. Once each page was completely soaked, the two friends carefully clipped them up in the garage so they could dry overnight. "What on earth are you both doing?" said Haru's mother. "It's for school," said Haru. "Oh," said Haru's mom. Next, the two boys went back inside Haru's house. "Now we've got to order some pizzas," said George. "Order pizzas?" cried Haru. "Why? Kipper's just going to steal them again." "That's what I'm counting on," George said with a devilish grin. George picked up the telephone and spoke with the manager of pizza place. "I'd like to order 4 pizzas for tomorrow," said George. "What's the hottest kind of chili peppers you guys have?" "Ghost chili peppers? Can we get double ghost chili peppers on each pizza?" "Cool." After the pizzas were ordered, it was time for George's haircut. Haru went to the closest and found the clippers and scissors his mom always used to cut his hair. Haru had never cut anybody's hair before, but he was more than happy to give it a try. "Just make the top part flat," said George. "They won't stick out when I tear those stout pants." "I'll do my best," said Haru. Haru clipped and cut, and then he snipped and shaped. When he was done, George looked at himself in the mirror. "I look awesome," George explained. "I'm gonna wear my hair like this from now on." And he always did. Now the part 2 has finished, alright? The rest of the book, starting from chapter 26 to chapter 34, I'm gonna read it in part 3, and I will upload this as soon as possible. If you watched the part 2 video to the end, I really appreciate you for watching. And if you hadn't checked out part 1, try checking it out too. And I really hope I can see you in the 3rd part of this novel. And I hope you take good care of yourself. Bye bye, and thank you for watching.